To start with my teaching statement, I would like to mention first that these are my ideas about how the teaching profession would be. Also, some of my experiences, specifically in the college, and some of the documents I have read in the course of my career. Firstly, I would like to mention some things that have been changing throughout my life in the career. So, when I firstly started studying to be a teacher in college, there were a lot of doubts about how would be my performance in the future. Initially, there wasn't really a big interest regarding education, and I used to saw those learning theories and legal documents, such as the Ley 115, as something that I might memorize just to present an exam or a paper. When I joined the career, my full interest was in both Spanish and English. Even though I have some familiars that are teachers, I feel that they weren't really the reason for me to join this career, but the experiences in school with the literature and English. I also considered the fact of being a really quiet person as an impediment, as it has been throughout my life really difficult to speak with others. As I started progressing in the career, there was a bigger emphasis in the pedagogy and investigation courses that started building in me a recognition of the importance of the career and what it meant to me to be a teacher. I feel that I have a huge responsibility as a teacher that goes from my preparation to the recognition of the constant updating of information regarding the educative practice and learning itself. That responsibility has to do as well with how I influence on the future of different individuals and how having a poor basis will mean leaving people with a lackluster process. Specifically, the course Construcciones Curriculares started posing all these questions and creating a more analytic and reflective point of view of the legal document. Recognizing different learning theories has helped me realize the distinct proposals of how people learn, as well as how the majority of the times they tend to be focused in either a psychological or a social aspect, instead of integrating both. I started working as well in a project regarding study skills, which helped me recognize how everything is constantly shifting and even how the technological changes transform culture and therefore education. About the theories, I feel like the constructivism is the theory that fits me the most as I trust in regulation, the determination of the context in learning, appropriation, and the active construction of knowledge by the students, as well as the mediation by the teacher, and cooperative learning, which is really important and focuses specifically in the social part of learning. It is also related to the understanding of study skills and acquisitions of habits as a possibility to potentiate academic performance and reflection in the learning processes, as well as an experimentation with technology as a way to improve volition towards different topics. It also influences a lot of the, for example, theories or proposals regarding technology, for example, the distributed technology, which I'm going to talk about later. So now I'm going to give some ideas about some of the beliefs that I have about the document that I have read that configure the way I saw all these topics: technology, learning of languages, how our society is constantly shifting, evaluation, and the law as well as the methods and approaches constructed by the language learning theories as well as the learning theories. Firstly, technology is an important topic that has been talked about specifically in education throughout the last years. Some definitions take technology as the processes that respond to practical problems of the human. According to Quintanilla As human being transforms and create technology systems, technology also configures the cultural dynamics of different contexts, but in both in infrastructure as in the way we think as well. For me, technology, especially nowadays, implies a shift in the roles for the teacher and the student, as well as the recognition of other contexts we were learning or where learning is taking place. I bring as an example the proposal of Brown 2008, where technology is not used for the same things we could do in the classroom, but to produce new things with new tools. I think that some communities in the internet, as mentioned by Brown, the fanfiction.net, help people build an identity intervened by acceptance, sense of belonging, sharing stories, receiving feedback about their participation, and read with a critical eye. I think technology gives some tools and helps the sharing of meaning through multiple modes of representation, such as image, sound, color, videos, etc. We could talk then about digital literacy as the third literacy skills apart from the reading and writing of printed text, as mentioned by Lewis, Schivel, Corwood, Hassett, 2010, talking about distributed cognition. So I will quote them in the following uh, sense. In a digital age that allows for multiple, multimodal, and multifaceted textual representations, we examine how the cognitive process of knowledge construction has changed. While literacy skills are still rooted in reading and writing, new literacy practices involve multimodal texts that extend beyond the print and foster distinct styles of engagement and practice. So, to continue with the topic and my opinions about technology, I believe that the use of technology implies participation in new spaces over the information published. The difference of each individual and how everyone experiences or has experiences facility in specific areas and how there is a collective intelligence and a constant collaboration. Other spaces could be the social networks and applications we constantly use, for example, YouTube or Facebook. We could find that learning resides not, for example, not in just the teacher, but also outside the schools. Now, going toward the learning of language, I believe initially that motivation is an important factor. I believe that there has to be an intentionality to learn a language in order to facilitate the process. In my case, at the beginning, I did not have motivation for learning English, other than the one of getting good grades for my parents in the Colombo. Later, I got into video games and I found that English was constantly demanded for my communication in, for example, trades, parties, raid bosses, and such. So I gained some motivation to learn the language. Now I feel really attached to the language as I like rock music, as the willing to understand the context where the bands emerged, as well as the lyrics behind the songs, is really interesting to me. Also, the history of language, both in Spanish and English. I feel like treating this kind of topics when I get to teaching, specifically with music, not using the lyrics of songs and filling the blanks for vocabulary as it has been, but as a way to know different cultures and recognizing some facts of the things people tend to like. Now, taking into consideration the methods and approaches, I would like to say that there are good and bad things to take from some of them. As an example, from the direct method, I will take to the living grammar as a secondary from the communicative approach. It's focused on interaction and in communication. And for example, the natural approach, its meaning over grammar, where the important thing is the communication of messages with meaning and the contrast to how the and it's, for example, a contrastive way of seeing how, for example, some of the methods focused more in the form of the language rather than the use of it. I will take, for example, from the content-based instruction the connection with prior language, from the TVL, the meaningful tasks focused on outcomes, and the alternative to method or post method that, demanding a lot on the teachers, offers a lot of flexibility. Finally, I think that repetition focuses on anticipated responses of the words. As there is no contextualization, those words will be forgotten and will lose their meaning. For this reason, for me, there has to be a constant input and output in which students receive information in different periods of time, which is guaranteed to be used in the future and which is going to be asked after. I am interested in the acquisition proposals, but not as it has been shown with the limitation of ages, but knowing how the mind might work. I believe that children use some general rules even if they do not how to use them, and they do not imitate but get some abstract general principles that are fostered with some background, such as social experiences and interaction skills, facilitating conditions, and here goes, for example, motivation and feedback that help the expansion of children's structures. Now, my positions from the law, specifically here in Colombia, I would like to mention that their focus has been that on the commercial use, for example, in English. They mention, for example, that there are foreign languages, but they limited it or tend to limit it to English. This sometimes tends to be frustrating, and that not just, for example, for ourselves as teachers, but how it's going to be applied in the schools and how it might be frustrating for the students. So, the context where those laws are aimed will be aimed to some people that will feel that English is useless for them because they live in a context where they don't feel like going to other countries to visit other countries. So for them, the English is completely useless. Also, I would like to mention the proposals by Guerrero 2009, which mentions that Colombia has a variety of languages that should be seen as resources and not as problems, and the law has always put Spanish and English as the principal languages, ignoring or giving less importance to other cultures with their own languages. For me, some of these proposals of the laws, however, are well sustained, but are proposed to a context that is constantly shifting and will seem not as contextualized later. I think that the integration of disciplines they propose is really interesting and could give other points of view for either math, English, or other subjects. Finally, evaluation is something that also changes as it focuses in other proposals that mention the formative assessment. That means that instead of focusing in the results, it will be on the process, taking into consideration strategies of auto-regulation, such as peer assessment, but the self-assessment, and the proposal evaluation that is permanent and continuous and a continuous process which focuses on learning and real tasks. So everything is going to be contextualized. So we do not need to leave behind, however, those scores, for example, from the summative proposals and the preparation of tests and the constant look for usefulness of those texts and try to give some constant results about how those, for example, summative texts give some evidences of what was obtained in that whole process of the formative assessment. So, to conclude, for me, being a teacher, takes a lot of responsibility, and how it's often mentioned implies the constant actualization of our practices. We should not get into one proposal about how reality, and in our cases, how learning works. I think technology is what might shift entirely our reality, but not moving out the teachers, but changing the roles they have in their practice. Also, how the informal learning takes more and more importance in how people learn, either in the city or in the internet.